Hey, what is up, everybody? How are you? I wanted to finally address the topic of transportation and how to get around in foreign countries because I've had several people comment on some of my videos inquiring about how to get around and what to do and if all you do is just get lost. And I'll share with you what I've learned about how to figure out transportation systems and how to get around. So, first of all, the answer is twofold. And that is number one, like you will be able to figure out how to get around even when you don't speak the language. Natural intuition will be part of it, but also, just following signs. And the second part of it is yes, you are absolutely going to get lost and be so confused and not be able to know which direction's up. And I want to start this video before I give you some practical tips that I use to get around with a story. So, this is a story about when I was down in the Canary Islands for 2 months and I was getting ready to leave. And the Canary Islands are Spanish speaking islands off the coast of Morocco. And I was in the airport and I got to the airport like so early because that's kind of one thing. I always give myself a lot of wiggle room, at least like an extra hour or two to get to and from the airport because you just never know what's going to happen. So I arrive at the airport in Tenerife and I'm like, yeah, okay. I was slightly hungover because I had partied with some friends the night before. So I was like really looking forward to just like checking in and relaxing. And I go to the desk because there's a visa check for, I was taking Ryanair. And since I'm an American, I usually have to get an extra stamp to verify my passport. So I go up, this is my first time, and I taking Ryanair, and I go up there, and the woman's like, "Where's your ticket?" And I'm like, I need to print it. And she's like, "No, you were supposed to check in at home and print it." And I'm like, "Oh shit, like what do I do?" So she's like, "Well, you can go over to information and try to connect to the internet and register online because if you don't register, it's going to be, an $100 expense for this and then $75 to print your ticket." And my little budget traveler mind was like, "Oh my god, what am I going to do?" So I run over and talk to the guy at information. My phone will not connect with Wi-Fi so that I can register. I asked the person, like, what can I do? They're like, well, there's computers that you can pay for down the terminal. So I'm like running down there. I get to the freaking computer station to check in, and everything is in Spanish. And I'm like, mother effer. So I'm sitting there. I put in a couple coins, and I'm like sitting there trying to check in. It's giving me some type of error. It won't let me print. And I'm like panicking because I literally have 5 minutes until I miss the window. So I like look around and I see some man in a business suit that was walking, and I'm like, excuse me. I was like, "Do you speak English?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Can you help me? I'm trying to check in for my flight." So this gentleman stepped over and translated everything, helped me checked in. I ran out of freaking time with my coins. I had no more coins left. And he's like reaching into his pocket to give me a freaking coin so I can check in for my flight. And long story short, I end up checking in, printing my ticket with literally maybe 60 seconds, a minute to spare. And I go back over to the check-in gate at Ryanair, and the woman clapped for me because she literally did not think that I was going to pull it off. But yeah, so that's that. So I finally just get through the terminal, and oh my gosh, it was just crazy. But I think the moral of the story is that if you are in a foreign country and you're really confused and don't know what to do or don't know the procedure or don't know how to read something, you really need to just be humble and ask somebody. Because I found, especially in Europe, I don't ever expect people to speak English to me. I really want to try to learn the language a little bit, but I will ask and try to find somebody that can help me that either speaks English or I know enough of the language to communicate with them. So I'm going to give you a couple little tips as to what I follow because I've taken a lot of flights and trains and buses, and I think the main thing that has helped me out a lot, because I tend to not be somebody who plans out and route, out my map. I usually, okay, I have to take this bus and then I have to go there. But aside from that, it's like if I'm going to a new host family, I don't plan it out in such great detail. I usually wait until I land somewhere, because a lot of the times if your flight's delayed or if something else happens that throws you off your schedule, it's just gonna cause unneeded stress, because you're gonna be thinking, oh my god, like I'm gonna miss this train, and then I'm gonna miss this bus. And so I generally tend to like wait until I arrive somewhere and then figure out my next step. And what I do is I often keep a little notepad with me. I think it's very important to always have a pen and paper as a traveler, because a lot of times with accents and the way that you might be pronunciating things, it cannot be interpreted correctly by the person. So for instance, when I was in Rome, I was trying to pronounce the place where I needed to go, and the person just kept saying, no, I don't know. And I pulled out where I'd written down the name of the town, and they're like, oh, and they said it, and it sounded very similar to how I was pronouncing it, but I was like, yeah. So I always try to at least have some basic notes as to where I'm going, and if anything, I pull that out. This is especially helpful because I've traveled to some more remote little towns in different European villages, and it'll really help people be able to point you and guide you. And I think that the second thing is to just be open to help. And I think I've come across a lot of travelers that were like, well, I don't want to seem like a tourist. Well, okay, you're in a foreign land, you're there, you're visiting, people can probably point you out that you're not a local. So I think the best thing to do is just be humble and smile and ask. And I think it's really helpful to learn a couple local words. And the things that I've found that are most helpful is excuse me, so you can politely inquire for somebody's help, where, as well as thank you. So those three little phrases, excuse me, where, and thank you, can kind of pretty much tie in a lot of what you need to know. And people can always write down things for you. If I'm not understanding what somebody's trying to tell me, I will ask them, can you write for me? And every single time I've always come across some really, really helpful people. And just know that when you do land somewhere, it is going to be overwhelming, but that's just part of the adventure. And I think the biggest thing is if you can't figure out a ticketing system, everything is just going to seem crazy to you. Simple things that you can do in your home country, such as getting a bus ticket, it varies from region to region. So there are going to be times when you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And, there's been times where, I've bought a ticket and then I had to validate the ticket and I just didn't know. And yeah, I think it's really beneficial to also be observant and kind of look and see what other people are doing. But just know that you really need to be inquisitive, and if you do mess up or make a mistake or not get off at the right bus stop, just remain calm and ask, and you will find your way. And I think the biggest thing is if you have, there's been a lot of times I've been on a bus where it's I just feel that nervousness of oh my god, am I going to get off at the right stop? And this is a lot of the times I just smile at the person next to me, and I usually will write down the place where I need to get off and say, here. And usually even if that person doesn't speak English or I don't speak their language, they're able to tell me. I've had a lot of people just have me stay with them, and then they indicate to me where I need to get off on a certain bus or a train. So I think the kindness of others does wonders in terms of being able to get around. Now, you do need to take precaution with certain things, because there's been times where I've stopped people or asked people, or people have seen me walking by myself and stopped and offered to give me a ride somewhere, more specifically men. But, as much as I want to be gracious and everything, if I'm by myself, I'm very cautious in terms of who I go with or who I interact with, especially if it's in a place where there's not a lot of other people around. Because a lot of times, if it is just a short distance, I do a lot of walking. So I think those are the little things that I do. Just keeping paper, staying humble, asking a lot of questions. You just have to be naturally curious and figure things out. But just know that you're never going to be perfect when it comes to travel, especially to places that you don't know where you're going. And maybe one time, you never know, you might end up at the wrong bus station, and you end up meeting somebody, or you end up finding the best place for coffee. So just kind of take it all in stride, and don't beat yourself up too much if you screw up here and there. That's all part of the fun. So anyway, I hope this at least gives a couple little bit of tips as to how to get around, because I think there is a lot of like fear around it, but there really doesn't need to be. In terms of trying to figure it out. And I'm just speaking for Europe. I'm sure there's other places, like I intend on going to Southeast Asia soon. It could be a totally different ballgame, but I also know and have the confidence that like once I land in a new country, you just have to take it step by step and not feel like you have to have it all figured out in a day. Okay? So happy travels to everybody. And if you have any further questions, I try to respond to every single comment. So feel free to leave me a comment below, and happy travels. Bye.